Good afternoon. I'm Karen Merrill, consultant at RBH, the provider for the EAP for participating OEBB Employees Independents. Today's presentation will be the third in a series of resilience webinars presented this contract year, with additional webinars continuing into next year. While researching background information for this training, I became keenly aware of the ongoing challenges faced by school employees on a daily basis. The work is demanding on so many fronts, and the resulting stress and anxiety can be overwhelming to the point of impacting relationships outside of work, increasing behaviors that put one's health at risk, and potentially compromising one's ability to be at their best in their important career roles. Fortunately, there's some highly effective ways to go about recognizing and responding constructively to the daily stresses of work. And to that end, I am honored to be able to present the program, Building Resilient Skills, to you this afternoon. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with over 30 years in the behavioral health field. I have a background in human resources, have worked as a trainer, a counselor, coaching, and EAP account management. I previously served as vice president of account manager here at RBH, and currently am fortunate to work as a consultant in private practice. So let's get started. Is there anything harder than being a school employee in today's environment? Schools are all over the news: crisis, headlines, safety issues, strikes, budget cuts. You could probably add to this list if we were in the room together. It goes on and on. So in order to make this time worthwhile and the presentation relevant to you, we'll provide background information, including the stress factors unique to the school environment. Once we've laid a foundation, we'll look at what we can do in the moment to reduce stress. We hear a lot about resilience these days as a way to combat stress, recognizing that things are always going to come at us to throw us off balance. We'll define it, learn how to build on it, report what the experts say, as well as offer other tools for self-regulation. We'll ask polling questions throughout and hopefully have some time at the end for questions. We're going to present a lot of information today, and just so you know, the PowerPoint and handouts will be available to you after the presentation. So to start to lay the groundwork, first steps in building a foundation, underlying atmospheric influences of stress, environmental factors contribute to how we approach our daily lives. We look at the largest kind of oval on this slide in terms of what's going on in society, our world around us, politics, headlines, social media. It's really hard these days to listen to news or read a newspaper that has any good news in it. Our second kind of interacting circle is our organization. What does work life look like? School districts, individual schools, how we get along with each other's employees. And then the last one is our personal life. What's going on at home? Are there financial challenges? Are there parenting challenges, relationships? And these three circles affect each other. One impacts the other and can change at any given time. And you're going to work every day with people whose circles are changing. So it's important to kind of know that this is an underlying stress factor. Next, we'll look at factors unique to the school environment. So, we love to do research, and this is from a national blog and data collected by a site called classcraft.com. So what we found, the top challenges in 2019, lack of empathy and teamwork, employees working too many roles, not enough time for breaks, employees held accountable for way more than they expected in a changing landscape. Next, not enough time to plan and execute, excessive paperwork that increases for data collection, trying to keep up with districts' changing expectations, having to apply a prescribed curriculum, and unruly behavior in the classroom. For most of us, the school environment can be a joy. It's why we got in this field. But it doesn't mean it can't hurt to vent about the headaches. It helps us process and makes us feel better. More factors. So in today's world, oftentimes parents don't have home care, so they send their kids to school sick, and that influences everyone. Policymakers can be out of touch. Parents can be absentee or hovering. Extreme environmental stress. People will respond and report on seeing hygiene issues, abuse issues, signs of a challenging home environment. Classroom disruptions. This goes from A to Z. On the front end, we see students being distracted by iPhones, interacting with others. Bus drivers tell us that they're having to manage way more behavioral issues than they bargained for. At the highest level of classroom disruption are safety issues. This occurs when students' behaviors interferes with instructions and staff members really being able to maintain a stable classroom or ensure safety. In the extreme, students become a danger to themselves or others, and it results in having to clear the classroom and reassign to other classes. This disruption harms everyone. So our first polling question, what is your stress, what we call our stress tell? In other words, how do you know you're stressed? What signs and symptoms do you experience? Is it sleep? Is it anxiety? Does it show up in relationship issues, muscle tension, using food or substances to help cope? What is what we call your stress tell? It'll give us an idea of what concerns you most. So we'll give you another few seconds and then Brenda will tally it up.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I just closed the poll. Let's see what we have. 76% voting for A, sleep difficulties. 57% voting for B, feeling anxious. And 26% voting for C, relationship issues. 54% voting for D, muscle tension. And 52% for E, using food or substances to cope.
Thank you. That's really important because what that tells me is that you're experiencing multiple symptoms at any given time. And there's certainly enough reason to see why it's such a stressful environment. So one more slide on what these unique factors are. Sadly, historically, students with disabilities, students of color, and more underserved students are disproportionately impacted. Makes it harder for anybody serving those populations. Employees feel impacted by an urgency to protect children and experience their own psychological toll of student abuse. Employees end up feeling frustrated from feeling isolated and defeated and tell us that, I wish we knew what to do. They can feel helpless in this setting. So to also kind of be able to get a sense of how you experience all this, we're going to move into our second polling question. Of the issues previously discussed in these unique factors, what concerns you most? Is it your sense of safety? Is it the lack of resources available to you? Feeling defeated? Feeling overwhelmed? Feeling frustrated? Give you a couple more seconds. Okay, Brenda.
Okay, so we have 14% voting for A, safety, 25% voted for B, lack of resources, 41% voted for C, feeling defeated, 75% voted for D, feeling overwhelmed, and 57% voted for E, feeling frustrated.
Okay, thank you. So the fact that we're not in the room together and I can't ask for a show of hands helps me kind of see what you're experiencing, where you're coming from. All right, let's keep going. So now we've certainly provided enough evidence to paint a picture of just how difficult it is to work in the public education system at this point in time. Let's take a breath. We'll offer concrete tools next to build resilience and decrease stress in this environment. As we transition, we'll do some deep breathing to clear our body and mind. This exercise can be done standing up, sitting down, and pretty much anywhere at any time. Either way, all you have to do is be still and focus on your breath for just 1 minute. Start by breathing in and out slowly. One breath cycle should last for about 8 seconds, 4 with an inhale and 4 with an exhale. Watch your body rise and fall. Try to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Let go of your thoughts. Let go of things you have to do later today or pending projects that need your attention. Simply let thoughts rise and fall of their own accord and be one with your breath. Purposefully watch that breath, focusing on your sense of awareness on its pathway as it enters your body and fills you with your life. Then watch with awareness as it works its way up and out of your mouth as the energy dissipates into the world. If you're someone who thought they'd never be able to meditate, guess what? You're halfway there. If this was helpful, you might try it as a habit for 2 or 3 minutes instead of 1. Let's move forward. So the rest of the presentation will focus on what we can do to build resistance from our stress by building resiliency skills. Resilience and positive thinking go hand in hand. Positive attitudes go a long way in helping us cope with demands of work and home. The good news is we don't have to be born resilient. We can learn to think and behave as if we were. What is resiliency? It's the capacity of a strained body to recover its size and shape after compression. It's an ability to recover from or adjust to misfortune or change. I visualize a sponge that I squeeze as hard as I can and then release it. What does it do? It retains its original shape. It's the ability to withstand hardship and not be affected adversely, and even excel without resorting to harmful habits to cope, like alcohol, drugs, overeating. I envision a kayak with the ability to right itself in the rapids. It's the ability to be elastic. That's what resiliency can do for us. We can't get to adulthood without having overcome challenges, transitions, change, and loss. So whether we realize it or not, we have built resiliency by getting through life and the challenges it presents. Our mindset towards adversity is the most critical factor to resilience. We find resilient people have a wide repertoire of healthy responses, aligned with their values, to be able to help in a challenging experience. They use emotional intelligence to make meaning of adversity, take positive action to meet goals, while thinking beyond oneself along the way and thinking back and learning from what worked before and apply it to the next situation of hardship. So you may remember Scott Peck. He wrote a book a long time ago called The Road Less Traveled. And in it, he remarks that once we truly know that life is difficult, once we really understand and accept it, then life is no longer is as difficult. It's the expectation, I think, that we get caught in, well, once we get over this hurdle, it's going to be smooth sailing. And life just isn't like that. So kind of accepting what the landscape looks like is a good starting place. So in this presentation, we are going to also kind of bring in some comments from experts in the environment that have done a lot of work on resilience. The first is a book called Option B by Sheryl Sandberg and Anna Grant. You may know Sheryl from her best-selling work, Lean In. She's been a kind of a powerful force for a long time. What you probably don't know, unless you've read Option B, is that while in Latin America celebrating a family wedding, she found her husband, David Goldberg, on the floor of the hotel gym, dead from an aneurysm. Adam Grant is a psychologist and friend. She chose to help her make sense of what had happened to her, how to move forward with her life with 3 small children and an active career, and also by learning to share her experience so that it might help others. She learned that you become more resilient by surviving, that you survive challenging experiences. And she talks about post-traumatic growth rather than post-traumatic stress, which I found really helpful to hear. It's interesting, she did her own research. Martin Siegelman is a psychologist. He had identified the 3 Ps, the landmines that impact growth from hardship. The first is personalization, that we're at fault. Somehow I caused this. Somehow, if I'd done something differently, this tragedy wouldn't have happened. Also, that it's pervasive, that it's going to affect every area of my life, not only work, not only parenting, but every area. And that it's permanent, that these aftershocks will last forever. It's a way of thinking in absolutes, that we have effective forecasting, that we predict that I'll feel like this forever. She found instead that the brain actually has a psychological immune system and that there are tools for recovery. Never and always signs of thinking are things to watch out for, and also watching out for over apologizing for things that happen in your life. More from option B. This I found fascinating, that resiliency awareness is not new information, that Greeks and Roman scholars in 5th century BC learned that all life involves suffering, that we need to be aware of our blessings. We need a stop button. So when our thinking after a hardship occurs starts to go south, like it's awful and it's gonna be awful and it's never gonna change, you hit that red stop button in your mind. Stand up, turn around, think about something else. Self-compassion is huge in building resilience and recovering from hardship. It's hard for us to really own and know that being imperfect is part of being human. We can make mistakes and we can feel guilty about that mistake. And then we can actually learn by that. That's an action. The problem is sometimes we blame ourselves and that more attacks character. So knowing the difference between behavior and character is important as we build resilience. We can't change a situation. We can only change ourselves. Thinking about a gratitude list, and even when we're feeling really low, an accomplishment list, not like you scaled, great mountains, but that you felt lousy and even got up and made a cup of tea. What we're able to do, what we're not, instead of what we're not able to do. She speaks to 4 core beliefs that help us build resiliency. We have control over our lives. We don't learn if we don't fail. If we keep things safe and don't make mistakes, we don't learn new approaches. We learn from failure when we look closely and identify what went wrong and what we might do differently. We matter as human beings. We have strengths that we can rely on and share. We all have blind spots. We learn when they are respectfully pointed out. Sometimes not acting on blind spots is denial. Sometimes we just don't see them. And if we're resilient enough to listen to feedback, we can learn from them. So thinking about our mindset, performing under pressure mindset. What is the usual advice when you're anxious before an important event, performance, or competition? Ever hear just calm down? How effective is that advice in the face of pressure? Probably not so much. An alternative approach is to accept the situation and use it as energy. They've done a lot of research about this too, and that if you have some sense of anxiety, we do better on social stress tests. They studied mid-career teachers and doctors and learned that in these stressful positions that their attitude towards stress protects from burnout, that there's a growing mindset rather than a fixed one. An example would be, math is hard for me means learning it is working my brain, not that math isn't for me, but that we open up our thinking. So, we used to hear stress kills. Well, the fact of the matter is, it's not that stress kills, it's that avoidance is costly. It can cause any number of emotional reactions. And it results in resource depletion, isolation, and then what we find are those self-destructive distractions. Facing the problem and trying to solve the problem is much more helpful. We call that an arousal reappraisal, that, we look at that catastrophic thinking that sometimes we fall into. Instead of I'm overwhelmed, we think that I've been through these rough spots before. Instead of it's too much, it will get better. I can't stand it. Well, the fact of the matter is we are standing in at that moment, but an alternative way is saying, I'll find a way. We move past the traumatic life events. When life has tested our strength, we're much more likely to know how to handle it next time. Our past resources can become a resource. So know you can change the channel. We have the capacity. What can I choose to control? What steps can I take to get there? And we can even use stress in a positive way as fuel to act. Our next polling question. Do you believe the way we think about things, whether positively or negatively, affect our actions?
Okay, I just closed the poll there, and we have 98% have voted for true.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, it's tricky because sometimes we don't realize that we're, our self-talk, that tape that goes in our head is, kind of leading us towards more negative thinking. And we do know that if we think positively, it helps a great deal. So let's redefine stress. Let's look at it in a different way. Stress is what arises when something we care about is at stake. Kelly McDougall has done a lot of research about this. So you might think about a recent stress. What was it that you were caring about, afraid of impacting or losing? It's important to kind of get a handle on our behaviors so we know how to progress next time. So let's say you're at work and you're in the throes of a very stressful situation. What can you do right now? So here's a de-stress in 10 seconds. Step 1, smile. Think to yourself, I don't need this stress. I don't want this stress. Take a slow, deep belly breath. Do that 4 slowly in and out. Take a second breath. Close your eyes at the top. As you exhale, visualize or feel something warm in your body and flowing down your hands and feet. Think the phrase, I'm calm and I'm in control, and open your eyes. And it will recalibrate you. It's a tool to use in the moment when you need it. Okay, our next expert. So this is David Viscott. David is a psychiatrist who's actually worked with patients on building resilience through resolving the unfinished business of their lives. So kind of the guts of it, though, is that he comes up with these 10 rules of thumb that help us build resilience and just kind of, move through life in a more comfortable way. Tell the truth, face life openly, work to say what you mean, feel, believe, accept yourself as you are, accept others as they are, know and accept your weaknesses, stop trying to prove yourself so hard to others, let go of the past, give up false expectations, and take responsibility for your life and how it turned out. It frees up energy to be able to move forward. All right, more tips. Accept what you can't change. Put that energy into things you can control. Learn from the past. You know, we sweat a lot of small stuff, and in the scheme of things, many of the situations that bother us are small annoyances. Check out your perception. Be sure to look at facts objectively. Are you using distorted thinking? Is there another way we can interpret what happened? What if you were feeling better? How might someone else see it? Watch those kind of guilt, shame provoking words like shoulds, oughts, and must statements, and try to look at stressors as opportunities for growth and learning. They provide a chance for us to learn more about our strengths and vulnerabilities. Setbacks in personal life and career can be occasions for thinking about our values and goals. So our last guest expert is a man named Eric Greitens, and he wrote a book called Resilience. Eric is a Navy SEAL who did a number of tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, and has written one of the most sensitive books around on this subject. He had a colleague come back struggling with such acute PTSD that he was broken and by it, and his life was collapsing. And he came to Eric, and Eric wrote him kind of a series of letters on things they'd gone through together and building resilience. So he actually, Eric, used traumatic stress events to build resilience and act as a mentor to others. So he believes that resilience helps move us from pain to wisdom, from fear to courage, and suffering to strength. We've talked about that absolute thinking, you know, it's awful or it's wonderful. He says really resilient people allows us to hold two thoughts simultaneously, meaning that you can know in a moment that you feel terrible and low, and also know that you're going to feel better. He's very big on intention and result, and that if we are really mindful of our intentions, it will shape the result of our actions. He talks about acting the way you want to be, finding a role model that you might want to mimic some of their behaviors. He also believes a lot in that, you know, kind of self-compassion, and know that there's good and evil in all of us. He believes, like Cheryl, that being willing to fail is what allows us to learn and accept ourselves more fully. You might remember Joseph Campbell was very popular a while back. He wrote a book called The Power of Myth, among other things, The Hero's Journey. It kind of mimics almost the Iliad and the Odyssey in a certain way, but he talks about how a person passes through a series of trials and finally returns to finding themselves and their vocation. And he believes that their vocation place is where the joy of work meets their own personal needs. He believes that there's nobility and excellence that we bring to any kind of work that we do. So Eric says practice resilience, that it's something we need to practice. So, and even that looking at the magnitude of a challenge times the intensity of the practice equals our rate of growth. Take big challenges and break them down into small steps. We don't learn by seeing events as a catastrophe. We learn by looking at mistakes as what they are. He likes visualization rehearsal. What is the worst that can happen? What will we do? Forgiveness is big. Have you ever heard the expression that we need to give up all hope for a better past? Our past is what it is, and if we accept it and move on, it's much more hopeful. Think about what you're aiming for, where you're going. How can I do it better? Speak through your actions. Change your frame of mind. It's an interesting way of kind of shifting an outlook. More. Listen to your emotions, whatever they are, even if you're not proud of them, and honor them. Accept them for what they are. Quit arguing with reality, kind of like that same thing about your past. It is what it is. Don't be a victim. Get clear on what we can control and what we can't. It's a lot of energy we oftentimes put in what others can control and what is really outside most people's control. It can be helpful to focus on others and volunteer, take ourselves a little less seriously, find meaning in adversity, takes time. Share wisdom with others and lend support. Identify thinking distortions that hurt us and then change them. It's getting in touch with yourself and being comfortable in doing it. Next, ever hear the acronym HALT? HALT says it's hard to be in control when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. I believe we have a reservoir of coping mechanisms based on our self-care deposits. When stressful events occur, we get depleted. So we need these things. We need rest. We need exercise. One thing, we need to drink plenty of water. We need to know our stress tell so we can intervene on it. We need to know we can't be everything to everyone and find reasons to find humor in everyday challenges, particularly when some of those things can be pretty bleak. Own our limitations, have fun. Our stress tell is how we know we're getting stressed. It's a kind of a visceral reaction. So knowing what that is and knowing when we need to change the channel. More tips on what we can do right now. So there were a couple of things I found I'd never heard about. One is called a Nam Yoga hand trick. So if we apply pressure to the space between our second and third knuckles, just kind of that joint at the base of our pointer and middle finger, it can create a sense of calm. Sharon Melnick, the author of Success Under Stress, says it activates a nerve that loosens the area around the heart. Hand mudra means bending your index finger towards your thumb and your thumb around your finger. Another way of what we can do in the moment. And bananas are great in reducing stress. Lots of potassium that lowers our blood pressure, good for the digestion, and calms us. So other things you can do in that moment. Even in a stressful situation, you can change channels and visualize something peaceful. Being around plants are not only pretty, but research tells us they can help calm us down. Classical music has a soothing effect. If it's appropriate where you work, chewing gum relieves anxiety and increases focus. When we literally change positions, getting up from our desk or moving around, it short circuits circular thinking patterns, brings oxygen to the brain. So a quick stroll past cubicles or wherever you are can be helpful. And instant deep breathing techniques that nobody has to know you're doing. If you put your hands behind your head or your hands behind your back, it opens up your chest. So we move from breathing diaphragmatically, which makes us anxious, more to a belly breath. So more tips. We talk a lot about breathing, but it does properly reduce our sensory overload. Navy SEALs deep breathe, and if anybody needs some stress reduction, it can be them. You know, we need to embrace stress. It's interesting. Henry Ford said, whether you think stress is positive or negative, you're probably right. Meaning the way we think about it is how we then feel about it. Be imperfect. You may know Brene Brown is doing organizational research. She discovered that those that are overly stressed and unhappy often share the same trait. They believe they need to be someone better than who they currently are. And people in school systems are often prone to perfectionism. So, not doing enough and mistakes being magnified. You don't have to you don't have to feel that way. You do what's possible. You're already doing enough. Limit that grass is greener thinking. You know, grass is greener when we water it, and so don't beat yourself up. Sometimes we confuse feelings of exhaustion and burnout with hard work, but we don't have to feel on edge and depleted. Is there a way to delegate or use some kind of other kind of tool? So, Mark Twain shares a little wisdom. I'm an old man now, and I've known many great problems in my life, most of which never happened, which is absolutely true. So we might ponder that sometimes. So our last polling question, which of the following tools are you likely to, that we talked about, are you likely to try in the coming weeks? Exercise, mindfulness regarding food or substance, mindset awareness, deep breathing, be a human being, accept imperfections. What do you got, Brenda?
Okay, Karen, I have 64% voting for one, exercise, 40% voting for mindfulness regarding food and substance, 62% voting for mindset awareness, 72% voted for deep breathing, and 37% voted for be a human being, accept imperfections.
That's great. That's wonderful. And I think, you know, the more you do it, the more it just becomes a habit and becomes really ingrained as helpful tools you can call on. So I'm really, really happy to hear your votes. All right, so as we start to wrap up here, I want to remind you about the wonderful EAP benefits you have through your OEB entity. You've got a series of confidential face-to-face visits with a counselor in their office, and you'll find out what number you have by asking your own human resource person. There are different session models, and it's not only just for you, it's for everybody in your household, per issue, per household member. You have 24-hour access help. You can talk to a counselor 24 hours a day if you need to. You can use online consultation with counselors. You can talk to a counselor telephonically if that's more convenient for you than taking the time to go into somebody's office. You've also got wonderful, what we call life balance resources, childcare, adult and elder care consultation, legal consultation, online legal forms, including a will kit, financial, identity theft, home ownership, a new program called College Planning Program, which is really helpful. And then there's a website, personal advantage website, Life Balance, with your access code, OEB, that has trainings, libraries of tip sheets, and wellness information. Also, new this year is what we, in the next slide, it talks about Total Brain. So this is a new no-cost resource for all OEB insured adult members. It's an online site where you can do brain exercises to manage stress and sustain focused attention. So I urge you to check it out at totalbrain.com OEB, and you can download that app and its other tools available. And then a reminder on oebwellness.com, the other things that you have, smoking programs, Weight Watchers, and a number of wellness programs. So you have a lot of resources available to you, and I'm happy that you really took the time to be able to attend this webinar, to be able to take advantage of this presentation. So we still have a few minutes left. If anybody has any questions, you can post them, and then Brenda will let me know, and I'll answer as best I can.
Okay, Karen, it doesn't look like we have any questions at this time.
Okay. So it gives you a few minutes to spare. There was a lot of material, and I hope that you keep it as reference and the handouts that are attached. And I so appreciate your thoughtful responses to the polling questions and for taking the time to join me this afternoon. Have a good evening.